Hey guys, Tiara here with Girl Fitness, and today's video is about how to ask for letters of recommendation for residency. The residency application process is a very involved process with many specific steps along the way. This process is also very integral to achieving the ultimate goal of becoming a physician. Last year, when I was applying for residency, although I felt my school did a great job of explaining to me the process, I still got confused from time to time about the intricacies of each step in the process. So I felt like this would be a great topic to do a series on. This video is the first part of a series I plan to do over the next few weeks about the different parts of the process of applying for residency. For those of you who watch this channel who are not yet in medical school and are just applying to medical school, or who are in college and pre-med, don't worry, because all of these steps could also be very applicable to applying for medical school. One of the very first parts of the process of applying for residency, and also one of the most important parts of applying for residency, is asking for letters of recommendation. Application reviewers sometimes look at the letters of recommendation before they look at anything else. So the first step of asking for these letters of recommendation is a very important part of this process. If you're in need of help with this part of the process, then make sure to keep watching. And if you haven't already, go ahead and make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any other parts of this series. Alright guys, let's get right to it. The first step in the process of asking for letters of recommendation is to find your letter writers. Most programs require 3 to 4 letters of recommendation to consider your application complete. My suggestion is that you go ahead and ask for 4 letters of recommendation. That way you have met at least the minimum requirements for the programs that require 4 letters, and for the programs that require only 3 letters, well, it doesn't hurt to have an additional letter. Also, if you're only applying to programs that require 3 letters of recommendation, I still would suggest asking for 4 letters of recommendation, because if one of those letter writers cannot meet the time commitments required to get your letter in on time, then you still have at least 3 other letters of recommendation and your application will still be considered complete. These letters of recommendation should come from people that you worked closely with, either throughout your 3rd year clinical rotations or maybe throughout your 4th year whenever you were on your sub-internship or acting internship, whichever your school calls it. It's also important to keep in mind that most schools also require for at least one of these letters to be from the chair of your department. For example, since I applied pediatrics, one of my letters had to come from the chair of my pediatrics department at my medical school. To prevent any of your letters from being impersonal, it's important to recognize this early and to recognize that if you don't know the chair of the department through working with them on your clinical rotations 3rd year, then maybe that's somebody that you want to work closely with through your sub-internship your 4th year. If you haven't had a chance to work with them closely throughout your 4th year, then you may want to do some research with them in your downtime. That way, all your letter writers know you personally and can provide feedback on your behalf that is personalized to your performance. Once you've found your letter writers, the next step is to ask and ask early. It is very important to ask for your letters of recommendation early on in the process. We are in the middle of a global pandemic, and even when we aren't in the middle of a global pandemic, physicians are incredibly busy. You don't want to give them a small amount of time in which to write one of the most important letters of recommendation you will ever have to ask for, because they understand the gravity of these letters and they want to make sure that they are very good. And if they don't think they have enough time to do it, they may take a little bit longer than past the deadline, and you may not have a complete application by the day that the electronic residency application service submits your letters of recommendation along with the rest of your application packet. Now, this doesn't mean that your residency application will be late if they do not submit your letter of recommendation before that October 1 deadline for this application cycle. It just means that on the day where almost everyone else in America will be submitting a complete application, yours will be incomplete. And most residency programs do not read applications until they are fully complete. You want to be one of those people submitting a complete application on the day that everybody else is, so you have a fair shot of being one of the first people seen on the day that applications are reviewed by almost all residency programs. As I just mentioned, this year, that day is October 1st, but that's because of COVID. So if you're watching this in a year when a pandemic isn't going on, that usual date is September 15th. Okay, now that we know how important it is to ask for these letters early, let's talk about how to begin the process of asking for a letter of recommendation. So it's probably best not to outright ask for a letter of recommendation in the form of an email. You want to have a personal conversation with your letter writer, either in person or, because we are in the middle of a global pandemic, through a video conference call. My suggestion is to start this entire process out by sending an email. You want this email to kind of fit the personality of the person you're asking for a letter of recommendation. If the person is more about formalities and they don't mind a little bit longer of an email, then you may want to send them a bit more detailed of a response. If the person is more straightforward and would like for you to cut to the chase, then make sure to do that instead. Here are a couple of examples of emails that I sent last year to 2 people I was asking for letters of recommendation, in which I set the stage for meeting up to chat about the application process. Here's letter 1. Dear Dr. So-and-so, my name is Tiara Range and I am currently in MS4. Last year, I had the honor of learning from you for 3 weeks of my pediatrics rotation on the ward service. I was wondering if you were available for a quick meeting anytime this week. I would be so appreciative of any time you have to give, even if we could only meet for 5 minutes. If you are available for a sit-down meeting, please feel free to email me back at this email address or call/text me at this phone number. Thank you for your time and consideration. Best, Tiara. Here is another example in letter 2. Hello, Dr. So-and-so. My name is Tiara Range and I am currently in MS4. Last year, I worked closely with you in clinic and enjoyed learning from you. I am currently applying for residency and would love to chat with you about the application process at your convenience. Are you available anytime in the next 1 to 2 weeks? Best, Tiara Range. As you can see, regardless of whether I was straightforward or explained in a little bit more detail, both emails are very brief and to the point. Keep in mind that my emails that I sent last year when I wasn't in the middle of a global pandemic differ a little bit from what you may send. Rather than asking for an in-person meeting, it may be in your best interest and in the safety of both you and the letter writer if you ask to meet up via a Zoom video call. Once your letter writer responds to your email and you have set up a date and time to meet, now we get to the fun part of actually asking for the letter of recommendation. Now we're here, we're talking to the letter writer and we're about to ask for the letter of recommendation. I suggest that you start off the conversation by making a little bit of small talk. Ask them how they've been doing, let them know how your year is going so far, and then ease into the subject by reiterating your interest in their field. Then remind them of the time you spent with them on the rotation and follow up by asking them for the letter. The conversation could go something like this. Hi, Dr. So-and-so. Thanks for meeting with me today. I hope all is going well and that you and your family are staying safe. As you know, we're in the heart of application season for residency, and I am still very interested in your field. I'm actually so interested that I've decided to apply for residency in your field of medicine. As I've been going through the application process, I've now reached the part of letters of recommendation. I really enjoyed working with you last year, and I felt like you best understood my interests as well as seeing how I've grown throughout my time on the rotation. Because of these things, I think you'd make a great letter writer for my letters of recommendation, and I was wondering if you would be willing to write me a favorable letter of recommendation for this application cycle. It is important to recognize that I did not just ask for a letter of recommendation, but specifically a favorable letter of recommendation. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes the letters of recommendation are the first part of the application that anybody who reviews the application even looks at. So it's very important that it is a favorable letter of recommendation and accurately describes who you are as an applicant and what your abilities are and what you can bring to the table to a residency program. By asking if somebody can provide you with a favorable letter of recommendation, you give them the opportunity to either agree to write you a favorable letter or for them to let you know that they could provide you with a letter of recommendation but that they could not promise whether or not it would be favorable. This is a great chance for dialogue about why they may not be able to write you a favorable letter of recommendation, and see if you can come to some sort of resolution. Don't take offense, and thank them for being honest with you and letting you know that you should probably look for another person to write your letter of recommendation. Then go ahead and move forward with looking for somebody else to write you a favorable letter of recommendation. If your letter writer agrees to write you a letter of recommendation, then we can move on to the next part of the process, which is providing them with the information they need to write that letter. Usually, when a letter writer agrees to write your letter of recommendation, they will immediately say something like, "Okay, I am willing to write you a favorable letter of recommendation. I will just need a few things from you." The things that somebody usually needs to write you a letter of recommendation are, number 1, a personal statement, number 2, a curriculum vitae, and number 3, your transcript. So it is very important to already have that information ready to go. I truly do suggest that you have written at least somewhat of a succinct draft of a personal statement so you can very quickly and easily provide that to your letter writer when they ask for it to write your letter of recommendation. When I was meeting up with my prospective letter writers in person, I would print out all of this information and have it in a folder. That way, whenever they asked me for this information, I would just give them the folder all together with my name on the folder. That way, all of my information was right there at their fingertips, and they realized that not only was I just asking them for something, but I was prepared and efficient enough to provide it to them because I knew what they would need ahead of time. That looks very good on your part, and it's setting the stage to get a letter of recommendation that is sent to the residency application service on time. If you're meeting up with a letter writer through a video call, then go ahead and have these documents prepared electronically in attachments in an email. That way, as soon as they ask for them and you're done with your encounter through the video call, you can immediately press send on an email that has this information attached. This leads to the next part of the process of asking for a letter of recommendation, which is following up. Even if you do meet in person with your letter writer and you hand them a paper copy of all of the documents they'll need, I still suggest creating an email that has all of the documents you provided by hand in an electronic form. That way, even if they lose the paper copy, they will always have an electronic copy available to them whenever they need it. In that email that you send to the letter writer with those attachments, include a brief thank you note, thanking them for their time. I suggest sending an email that looks something like this. "Hi, Dr. So-and-so. Thank you once again for meeting with me earlier and for agreeing to write a favorable letter of recommendation for my application for residency. I have attached to this email my personal statement, curriculum vitae, and the ERAS link page. If you need anything else, please do not hesitate to ask. Thank you so much once again." The ERAS link page that I'm referring to is something that you will see once you have started your electronic residency application service process. When you get to the section of letters of recommendation, you are allowed to enter the information for your letter writers, and whenever you do, it generates a letter of recommendation request page. And that request page has all of the information that the letter writer needs to be able to successfully upload your letter of recommendation to the electronic residency application service. This should be something else that you include in the attachments for the email that you provide your letter writer immediately following your interaction. This follow-up email should be sent to your letter writer very soon after your interaction. I would honestly send it the same day that you talk with your letter writer, and if you can't send it the same day, then try to send it at least the next day. Following up does not just include this, but it also includes following up with them weeks after the conversation until the letter has been written. If 3 to 4 weeks have passed and you still have not noticed on your ERAS that a letter has been uploaded from this letter writer, then reach out to them again by replying all to that last email you sent in the follow-up, and just let them know that you're once again thankful for their time and that they can let you know if they need anything without hesitation. That way, you're not questioning them about why they have not sent your letter of recommendation yet, but you're just merely reminding them of the deadline in the form of letting them know that as the deadline approaches, if they need anything from you, you are eager to provide them with whatever documents they may need. Once the letter of recommendation has finally been submitted, it is now time to do the final part of the letter asking process, which is thanking them. Once the letter of recommendation has been submitted to ERAS, it is important to thank the letter writers for their time and effort. I personally handwrote all of my thank you letters to each of my letter writers. If you think that your letter writer would be more comfortable in the middle of a pandemic receiving a personalized email rather than a handwritten letter to cut back on hand-to-hand contact, then feel free to provide them with a personalized email instead. Whichever way you decide to do it, just make sure to thank your letter writers for the time and effort they took to enhance your residency application by providing you with a letter of recommendation. Letter writers really appreciate when you take the time to not only thank them, but also to let them know how you're doing as the process continues. I also included in my thank you letter something along the lines of, I will make sure to keep you updated on how my residency application process and interview season goes. That way they know that I'll keep them updated on all of the steps of my residency process as I go through it in the coming weeks and months. It's once again just a small way that you are letting your letter writers know that you want more from them than just a letter of recommendation, but instead to involve them in your entire residency application process because you care about their mentorship. And that's about it, guys. I really hope this video helps you all as you go through this very important milestone in the residency application process. If you're able to use the steps that I mentioned to get your letters of recommendation, let me know how it goes. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you have any questions or just want to chat, make sure to let me know in the comment section below. And if you like videos about medicine, lifestyle, and fitness, then make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.